Welcome back, metas. I transferred my character to a hard PvE server a couple weeks back, and now at my wish machine in week 2, the MG4 Predator is available, so I thought it'd be a perfect time to talk about this weapon and builds that go with this weapon, specifically testing the mods that are related to Fast Gunner, because that's kind of what the MG4 does. And so we're going to go through and test all of the Fast Gunner weapon mods here, but also go through and test all of the mods that you would put into a build for the Fast Gunner as well. So any mods that will relate in your helmet, your mask, your chest piece, etc. Now this is going to be very similar to my shrapnel build video, which was an hour long. Thank you for all the support on that. But I'm not just testing. I'm going to go through the math, flashbang out from the Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to go through the math of each perk, comparing them to each other, each mod being compared to each other. And I'll take you through this a little bit later. But yeah, I have gone next level with my Excel spreadsheet and looking at the damage calculations and getting an estimate of like theoretically what mod should perform better in which combination. And then obviously testing it on a dummy as well. And then testing it in the real world and giving you my thoughts on which builds go better. And to be honest, you do have a kind of two real main options with the MG4. You have one that can be a boss melt weak spot build, and another one which is like a really good all-round build where you can take it through silos. It's really good at taking out small enemies, but it's also really good at taking out bosses. In both builds, we are building into weak spot and weapon damage. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. I have like over 200 hours in this game, and when I was doing these Fast Gunner calculations, I actually discovered an extra 25% damage, which I didn't know about before. Like I kind of knew about it, but I didn't realize that this thing did like 25% damage. So hopefully you'll take something away from it. As usual, I'll put all the timestamps down below, just like in my shrapnel video where you can scrub through them. I'll put summaries in at certain intervals, so if you just want to get to the summary, you can skip to the summary. I do think though you'll get a lot of benefit from listening to some of the damage calculations, because I think this will help you make better decisions about which mods to choose. And from the comments on the last video, a lot of people have improved the DPS, which is the whole point of these kind of stuff. But I wouldn't blame you for not sitting through the whole video, so there will be there'll be chapters that you can skip through. Like and comment will be greatly appreciated if you learn anything. And also, hey, if you want to go check out my live streams, come over, say hi. We play Once Human, but also variety. Space Marines 2 is on the agenda. I'll be playing that as soon as I get back from holidays. Cool, let's get into it. Topic 1, armor advice. Now, I am mainly focusing on testing all the mods today because I am only in week 2 of my new server, so I need a little bit more time to get armor sets together. However, last shrapnel video, a lot of people just wanted some general advice about armor to put on. So without any testing, just get this out of the way. If you're doing this build, the Bastille set is very, very good, at least 3 pieces, because when you crouch with this set, you get 40% weapon damage, which is huge. So very good to invest into the Bastille set. The Oasis mask is also in your wish machine, incredibly good. This gives additional Fast Gunner stacks, and you're going to realize why this is so good once we get to the damage calculations. And finally, I've also been pairing the Bastille set with the Renegade. So if you get 2 Renegade items on, you'll get weak spot damage plus 10% as well. And you can get this in the current wish machine if you've gone over to a hard server as well, and it's got the MG4 Predator. So there you go. It's a very, very general advice. We are building into weak spot and weapon damage. I have seen people put crit damage onto the MG4 as well. All my initial testing shows that I do a lot more damage with weapon and weak spot rather than weapon and crit. However, I'm in week 2. I need a little bit more time to like put everything together. I want to make my ultimate weak spot build and then my ultimate crit damage build and put them side by side. However, I think Predator, you'll be surprised. I would go down the weak spot weapon damage build and see how strong it is. I was very surprised myself. Okay, before we get to testing Fast Gunner and the MG4 mods that are related to it, need to understand some of the damage stacking that happens in Once Human. I went over this in heavy detail in the shrapnel video, but I'll give you a very brief summary here. This is the very basic formula, and it does change, but this is in general how it works. You have your base damage times your total weapon damage times your total enemy type damage, which is like normal enemies, elite enemies, great ones. So this all gets stacked or added together. So if you've got multiple mods with, you know, normal enemy type damage on it, you got 6% on one mod and 4% on another. It gets added together to 10%. And that becomes your total enemy type damage. Times by your total bonus damage. Now this is a pool of multiple things. At the very basic form, it includes your crit damage and your weak spot damage. So if you shoot a weak spot on an enemy and you get a crit, so for the dummy, you can shoot the dummy in the face and get a yellow number and a crit. It actually adds together your crit damage value and it adds together your weak spot damage, and that becomes your like total bonus damage value. There are other things that go in here, which I'll explain in a sec. And you also have times your enemy faction type, which we never spoke about last video. This is a new thing that I found out when looking at Fast Gunner, and we'll talk about that as well. Now, of course, as an example, this formula changes depending on what builds you're using. So for shrapnel, like shrapnel damage is half your base, it times your total weapon damage, it benefits from the enemy type damage, and in your bonus area, you actually have an additional value, which is your trap crit bonus, times by enemy faction type. And you also have another one, which is your total shrapnel damage, right? So just to illustrate, there are other things that change your basic formula depending on what builds you use. And this is the case with Fast Gunner as well, which is what we're going to talk about. So what does Fast Gunner do and how does it fit into this formula? Fast Gunner is a continuous buff. While the skill is in effect, each stack grants fire rate plus 1% and attack plus 1% for 2 seconds. Effects can stack up to 5 times. Right, we've got a new stat value here that we don't know how it fits into our formula, which is the attack stat. What does the attack stat do? Let's find out. Okay, so one of the easiest ways to have a look at the attack stat and what it actually does is to find a calibration with attack on it. You've probably seen calibrations that have the attack stat value. So I actually had a calibration. So I crafted 2 of these SMGs. So this one just has the stock standard calibration. It just has accuracy and stability. But I was able to craft another one, which is this exactly the same level calibration. So it's a level 4 calibration at tier 3. Remember, I'm only in week 2, so I can't calibrate these at the highest level, but they're same tier 2 calibration 4, tier 3 calibration 4, tier 3 calibration 4, but this one has attack plus 20%. So now we can have a look at what it does. So the first one to look at has no attack on it, and you'll see here the damage is 92. Damage 92, damage 92 in our stats. We're in Eternal Land testing because I've gone through tens of thousands of rounds and it's much easier to buy stuff in Eternal Land. Okay, it was 92. Oh, look at that. Okay, so it does 92 damage to the dummy and its value was 92. Great. Let's put on the one that I put on a 20% calibration. This has the attack stat, attack plus 20%. Now you can see it's gone up to 111. So we went from 92 to 111. And if we shoot, 111. Cool. So you're probably suspecting that attack stat value gets multiplies your base damage. So we had 92 times 1.2, right? Adding on 20%. 110.4. We've got a little bit of a rounding error because we're doing 111, but that is pretty good confirmation that your attack value or your attack stat, like attack plus 20, is actually changing this damage number here. And that just changed because I put my gun away. Open that back up. Cool, 111. So we're suspecting that Fast Gunner is actually going to modify our base damage stat when it procs, which is huge because this is the value that is used for every calculation, which means Fast Gunner is modifying the very, very base value that everything's multiplied by. So that's actually like incredibly good. That is the same as increasing your calibration level. That's the same as making a higher tier weapon, right? Because that all increases your like base damage. Now, of course, we've got to confirm that this actually works with Fast Gunner because we're assuming it does because we actually tested it with a calibration. So if we put on Wrath of Hades, this has Fast Gunner on it. And the reason why I use this for the test is because the MG4 has so many things going on. It's buffing things left, right, and center, and it's very hard to get like a separate individual value. Whereas the Wrath of Hades has just got Fast Gunner going on for it. And remember that Fast Gunner is going to give plus 1% attack and plus 1% fire rate up to 5 stacks. So we should get a 5% attack value increase on this number here. Okay, so let's equip it and go back. Okay, so we're at 90 damage. Now, just have a look at this for 1 sec. Does 86, not 90. This is that tricky 25% damage buff I told you about before. We're going to come back to it, but let's just get Fast Gunner out the way first. So we need Fast Gunner to trigger. If you look at the very bottom, you'll see ×5. So that is Fast Gunner triggering. And what we actually have to do is get Fast Gunner triggering and then quickly open our menu and see if the attack value has changed. Cool. So we started at 90 and now we're at 94. 90 times 1.05, which is a 5% from Fast Gunner. 94.5. Once again, we have a bit of a rounding error, but it rounded down to 94. On a side note, if you are doing this testing for yourself, I believe the game rounds this number first. So if you want to be really, really accurate in all your formulas, do what I just did then. Get your Fast Gunner procced. Quickly open your menu and take this value as 94 as everything that goes in your formula. Once I did that, pretty much all my formulas were spot on. So, cool. Fast Gunner with the attack value increases your base stat on the fly. So you're not going to see it in your stats when you just open your stat page until you start shooting. But you can start shooting and open it up and check that it's changed. Great. Now let's just take a back step to what I queried before, which is this is doing 86 damage and it says it should be doing 90 damage. And when I had the SMG on, okay, hold on. This SMG is 111. Okay, I've got the SMG equipped 111. 111. Why is it not adding up? And this is what I didn't know after like 200 hours of this silly game, is that the dummy actually counts as an enemy faction type. I knew it counts as a normal enemy, but it also has a faction related to it. So this little line that says penetration deals more damage against Rosetta. I knew that was there, but I had no idea how much damage it does. On the SMG, it has no elemental attributes or damage bonuses. So what happens is this. If you've got a weapon that has no elemental attributes or damage bonuses, it will do the exact amount of damage as per your damage stat here, right? So on the dummy, 111. If you have something else on it, so this has penetration, deals more damage against Rosetta, this actually gets a 5% debuff if it doesn't match the enemy faction. So the dummy actually counts as a proto-cell faction. So when I shoot it, I get 86 rather than 90. I get a 5% debuff. I had no idea that this was a thing. They actually get debuffed if you don't match the enemy faction type. If you match the enemy faction type, so I will put on the Hunter. Now this has impact, deals more damage against proto-cell. The SMG has no elemental type. The Wrath has penetration, deals more damage against Rosetta. And here we go. Boom Boom does suppression, deals more damage against Deviants. Right. So if I put on the Hunter, which has impact, does more damage against Protocell. Just make sure we got it equipped. Reloaded. Okay. Its damage is 210. 262. So 262 over 210. -1 times 100. 24.7% damage increase, i.e. a 25% damage increase when you match those enemy factions. So right now, I don't have a lot of builds because I pretty much invested everything into Shrapnel build with my last Valor last season. And this season, I'm doing Fast Gunner. But as you play the game more and you invest more in this game and make more builds, this becomes a pretty big deal because you actually get a 25% damage buff if you match it. You get a 5% debuff if you don't match it. Your damage is exactly the same if it's nothing, okay? And I did go and test this out in real world enemies, and it does apply the 25% buff and the 5% debuff. Cool. Okay, so now we have all the information we need to actually start looking at the MG4 Predator and all the mods that go with it. Starting just with the weapon features. So it has a 40% chance to trigger Fast Gunner on hit. We know that each Fast Gunner stack gives +1% fire rate and +1% attack for 2 seconds up to 5 times. So that means we can get 5% attack on all our bullets, which means this number here goes up 5%, our damage value, before all of our calculations go through. Whenever Fast Gunner stacks reach a multiple of 5, gain infinite ammo for 0.5 seconds. So what this looks like is when you are shooting the dummy, at the very bottom, just above my health, you'll see the Fast Gunner stacks. If you keep your eyes there, when that reaches 5, and look at my ammo, you'll watch that my ammo will stop being used. So I have infinite ammo for 0.5 seconds. Ready? Now, you'll probably notice it only procs once. It's only on every multiple of 5. So on the first proc of 5, I get infinite ammo for 0.5 seconds, and then your ammo is consumed again. Okay, so even though it's technically re-procking Fast Gunner to stay at a stack of 5, you don't keep getting the infinite ammo. Okay, it just procs 1. But it's important though, because as we get through builds, there are things that increase how many Fast Gunner stacks you have. In fact, you can get it up to 20, which means you get infinite ammo at 5 for 0.5 seconds. You get infinite ammo at 10 for 0.5 seconds. You get infinite ammo at 15 for 0.5 seconds. And you get infinite ammo at 20 for 0.5 seconds. Okay, so the next weapon feature is hitting the same target consecutively grants weapon damage plus 2% per hit up to 40%. Effect resets when switching targets. So you can get up to a 40% weapon damage for shooting the same target. And you can see this in your weapon stats. Or I'm just going to make sure my weapon is out. Open up my stats page. Have a look here. Weapon damage is currently at 0%. So shooting the same target, the dummy, should bring this up to 40% weapon damage. Weapon damage, 40%. Very nice. Now, if I switch targets, this weapon damage would go away. Cool. Final perk is when the remaining bullets is more than 50% of the magazine capacity, attack plus 40%. So you're getting 5% attack from Fast Gunner, but you're also getting 40% attack just from being in the first 50% of your magazine. And I think this should be reflected as well in our stat page. So right now I haven't shot any bullets. I'll just shoot a couple bullets and have a look. Our damage is saying 247. Now, if I get below 50% of the magazine, okay, that's definitely below. 182. Right. So another nice confirmation that a previous damage stacking is working correctly. Like attack is impacting this base value. So this is changing on the fly when you shoot the MG4 Predator, which is why the formulas are really, really complicated for this. So now let's get into that. Okay, so now let me show you how I did the calculations, the damage calculations for this gun, because there's a lot going on. Now, I haven't touched an Excel spreadsheet since I was in high school, so please don't judge. This probably looks very messy to someone who uses Excel all the time. However, it does work. And I'm getting very, very accurate predictions with it. I'll take you through it. Bit of a flashbang here. I'm not going to have this up the whole time. I'm just going to show you how I did the calculations, and then I'm going to pretty much tell you the results. So there's a couple of things we need to do because of the MG4 Predator has different values for the first half of the magazine and different values for the second half of the magazine. I had to do one bunch of calculations for the first half of the magazine and a second bunch of calculations for the second half of the magazine. We go through our normal damage stacking, like general formula. So we take the base damage, and this is where it already starts to get complicated because our base damage for the first half of the magazine has attack 40%. We have to go here. We have to look at, it's normally 174, okay? But it's going to have 40% on top of that for being in the top half of the magazine. And once Fast Gunner is procced, it's going to have another 5% on top of that. So we have to modify this to be that. So if you add 45% to 74, you get 252. We then take into consideration our dummy and our mannequin. So it's a protocell type. So we have a look at our MG4, and it actually has no elemental attributes or damage bonuses. Thank God. So it doesn't lose 5% and it doesn't get a 25% increase. Our damage value is our damage value. Very nice. We then need to times it by our overall weapon damage, and this is just for a base shot. So if we're shooting just a body, it's not a crit or anything like that, we need to times it by a base weapon damage, and that will give us our body shot calculation. So an example here that I'm going to give you is we're actually going to put on shooting blitz, I think is our first calculation to go through. And was it shooting blitz? Hold. Shooting blitz. Okay. So this has weapon damage plus 2.4% and damage against elites. That doesn't matter. Head damage reduction, that doesn't matter. Right. So this does have an extra 2.4% weapon damage on top of it. And what I do is aim. So I plug all of that into these damage values here. So I've got my base. I've got my base plus attack. So that's a 45%. Crit damage, weak spot damage. Weapon damage, from the gun itself, 40%. So these damage calculations are just showing you once everything's procced, like the best value you're going to get per shot. Once Fast Gunner is fully triggered, once you have the 40% damage value on the dummy, because it's the first half of the magazine, you got your attack plus 40 as well. Cool. We've also got our weapon damage from shooting blitz. So shooting blitz is Fast Gunner duration plus 4%. When Fast Gunner is active, weapon damage plus 15%. So we get another 15% weapon damage from shooting blitz. So that's in there too. Shooting blitz also, this one I'm using has weapon damage 2.4%. So we have to put that in a calculation as well. Cool. You plug all those in, and if I'm shooting the body and in the first half of the magazine and everything's procced, Fast Gunner's procced at 5%, you're getting the attack at 40%, you're getting your weapon damage from shooting blitz, you're getting your weapon damage from the MG4 itself, we should be getting a value of 397 for a body shot with everything procced. So we're probably going to have to get to our second magazine round for everything to be ready. What was it? 397. We're looking for, there it is, 397. Just saw it. Yeah, we can still see it. We'll go through another magazine as well. 397, 397, 397. Cool. Now, there's a lot of things changing because the damage is fluctuating as we go through our first half of the magazine to our second half of the magazine. I'll give you another example. So in the last 50% of the magazine, if I'm shooting a weak spot and everything is buffed, I should be getting 403.9, so rounded to 404. Okay, so we're looking for 404 as a weak spot with everything buffed on the heads. In the last 50% of the magazine, which we are now, 404. Did you see it? 404. Boom. We'll do again. So the last 50% of the magazine, a weak spot hit. 404. There it is. 404, 404. See that 386? That's what I'm talking about. 386 was snuck in at the end there. Why? Because 404 divided by 386 is, would you look at that, -1 times 100? 5%. It's like the fast gunner isn't being applied properly. 4.6%. Ran at 5. I don't know. This is the only thing that stumped me with this whole thing. Is like occasionally it looks like fast gunner's not actually being applied, even though it's still procced. So really, I just wanted to show you my process for this Excel spreadsheet, and that I've gone through and theoretically tested what's my max damage I should be getting in the first 50%, you know, for a normal shot, for a crit shot, for a weak spot shot, for a weak spot crit shot. And then I've gone and said, oh, I should get this, and what the actual value was. And I've tested this for everything, and I've confirmed that like my formulas are working. So I'm not going to keep bringing up this Excel spreadsheet. I'm just going to tell you the results now, because now I can just plug in each individual mods into my formulas and it will spit out what it should theoretically, what should be the best mod. But I've also gone through and tested it too. So let me give you a summary of the mods now. Okay, starting with the fast gunner weapon mods. The cowboy mod says, after reloading when the magazine is empty, fast gunner trigger chance plus 100%, i.e. doubles your trigger chance for 5 seconds. When fast gunner reaches max stacks, the duration is increased by 5 seconds. What this is saying, so just applying this to the LMG, so our fast gunner chance is 40%. So that's going to bring it up to 80% for the first 5 seconds after reloading when the magazine's empty. So the magazine's got to be empty first. So we've got to completely clear this whole magazine. And if you look at the bottom, as we reload this, oh, the perk doesn't come up. It's bugged. Reload. There it is. Okay, there it is. Cowboy. Cowboy, fast gunner. So this only lasts for 5 seconds and goes away. I don't know why it was bugged the first time around. Sometimes stuff like this happens in the game. So it's allowing fast gunner to, when that perk is on for 5 seconds, it's allowing fast gunner to trigger quicker. All right, so you're going to get the max stacks quicker. But as you can probably guess, this is not very good for an LMG. This is very much suited to a pistol with fast gunner that has a smaller magazine. So it's allowing you to trigger fast gunner really quick. And then it lasts for 5 seconds when you reach max stack. And the whole idea of it lasting, the fast gunner lasting longer, is it allows fast gunner to stay up during the reload. So for example, it's obviously not going to work with LMG because it takes so long to empty the magazine. But I've got fast gunner procced. It's at 5 procs. When I reload, you'll see I'll lose fast gunner. Now, you can imagine if you had a pistol and you empty your magazine very quickly and you've got that cowboy perk still on, you're going to maintain your fast gunner stacks between reloads, which is going to be great. So, first things first is this is not suited to the LMG, and we pretty much eliminate it from all our testing. It just doesn't work well. Cowboy, no good for the LMG, works on pistols. Hence, I mean, I didn't notice this before, but it's even got the revolver rounds in there. Right, okay. So then we're going to be testing shooting blitz versus precision rush versus shootout. Okay. So shooting blitz says fast gunner duration plus 4 seconds. When fast gunner is active, weapon damage plus 15%. So we'll put this on. Now you'll see this in active here, that the fast gunner duration plus 4 seconds, you'll see that it actually maintains fast gunner between reloads. Let's have a look. So fast gunner is active now, so I'll be getting the 15% weapon damage. And when I go to reload, you'll see that I can just reload in time to keep fast gunner fully procced at 5 stacks. Pretty cool. Sorry, if you're wondering why I always go the backpack first, it's because I undid my keybind for gear, and then I've only just redone it, and haven't changed. I'm not used to it yet. Cool. So shooting blitz essentially is with weapon damage plus 15% while fast gun is up. And the big part of it is it maintains fast gun between reloads, which is quite nice. Precision rush, when fast gunner is active, increase weak spot damage while continuously shooting for 3 seconds up to 45%. So this slowly builds up to 45%. You have to have fast gunner active. You have to be continuously shooting your weak spot damage, and eventually you'll get up to 45% weak spot damage. If you put this on, we'll slowly see weak spot damage increase. Let's reload. Right. See it jump up. Weak spot damage is jumping up. Now it is going to go back down as we got to the last 50% of the magazine because we're losing the 40% attack. And the last one is shootout, which says when triggering fast gunner, weapon damage plus 1.5% for 10 seconds up to 20 stacks, i.e. a 30% weapon damage for up to 10 seconds when you trigger fast gunner. So this is a little bit different from shooting blitz and precision rush, which basically says when fast gunner is active. So as long as fast gunner is active, this is working. Same with precision rush, but this actually requires you to trigger fast gunner to get that next stack of weapon damage. So as we're shooting stuff, we're actually going to get, and fast gunner's been triggered, which is down the bottom. Every time that it gets refreshed, we're getting extra weapon damage, up to 30 weapon damage, 30% extra. Cool. Now remember, my calculations can't take into consideration the infinite ammo for 0.5 seconds when we reach 5 stacks. It also doesn't consider the fire rate. It's just looking at the max output for these weapon mods when they're fully procced, which is often like technically the second magazine you put into a dummy because everything starts to get procced up and then everything's running at its like full potential. But it is a good ballpark to see, like, theoretically how much damage they should be doing, and then also actually test it. So, comparing shooting blitz with precision rush with shootout. For body shots, shootout had 20% more damage than precision rush. Makes sense because precision rush only does weak spot damage, so you're not getting any damage buffs. And it had 10% more than shooting blitz. So if you're shooting the bodies, body shots, shootout is best. Or if a boss doesn't have a weak spot. Okay. If there is a weak spot available, precision rush had 5.9% better damage than shootout on the weak spot and 17% better damage against shooting blitz. However, when we actually do the actual testing, there is a couple things that change here. So when I do the actual testing, shootout once again was the highest damage for body shots. It actually had 18% more damage than precision rush and had 9% more damage than shooting blitz. Great. Pretty much confirmed our formulas are working pretty well. Now, when we get to weak spot damage, it really depends on how you use shootout. If you remember, shootout was getting weapon damage. However, it lasts for 10 seconds. So what it means is some of that weapon damage carries over during your reload. So if you actually change magazines and keep shooting the dummy, you actually get different values than if you wait 10 seconds between each dummy test. So if you do follow-up shots on the dummy and maintain some of that weapon damage, the difference between precision rush and shootout for weak spot damage is actually really close. It's only like 3.2%. So what that means is if you use shootout, you're getting 20% body shots and you're only losing 3% on precision shots if you can do follow-up like magazines on a boss, right? You can reload and shoot again and like have minimal downtime. If you wait 10 seconds, that gap is going to widen a little bit more. So if a boss has a lot of AoE or, you know, like in the raid where you can't really stand still, precision rush is going to be your better option. But if you're working in a team and you're not targeted, shootout as an all-rounder is better. You can run through silos, you can take out small enemies easily, and you're only missing out like 3% on weak spot damage, as long as when you reload, you can put shots back onto the boss. So if you really want to min max and you just want to do like a boss melt, the boss needs to have a weak spot. You're obviously going to be running like a monolith where you just, you know, taking out bosses. You don't really care about smaller enemies. I find it really hard to shoot small enemies on the weak spot, like just general humans with the LMG, just because of the recoil with it. And I'm just a little bit lazy. And if you're using a controller, it's even harder. So if you're just doing min maxing on a boss rush, precision rush, weak spot damage, of course, damage against great ones, and then if you can get weapon damage on this too, that'd be perfect. If you're looking for a more all-round build, a bit of a lazy build like me, where I don't really want to be switching mods, I just want to run through stuff, shootout is definitely all-round a better option to have. You're getting the 30% weapon damage once it starts spooling, and if you can keep switching targets, or even like small enemies, if you can keep switching targets, you're going to maintain that weapon damage. And for a boss, if you can stay on the boss and reload and keep putting damage down range, you're actually going to maintain some of that weapon damage too, and you're actually not losing that much damage. So shootout is very, very good. Okay, on to helmet mods. We've got the usual suspects here with Momentum Up, which is a fire rate plus 10% for the first 50% of the magazine, and weapon damage plus 30% for the next 50% of the magazine, which is kind of nice because it pairs with the MG4 Predator, because the MG4 has 40% attack in the first 50% of the magazine, and then that drops off. So this kind of makes up for that dropping off, because in your second half of the magazine, you're going to get 30% weapon damage. And I compared Momentum Up with the only other option I thought you would put with the MG4 Predator, which is Precise Strike. Hitting a weak spot grants weak spot damage plus 12% for 3 seconds. Effect can stack 3 times. So that gives you a total of 36% weak spot damage once it's all stacked up. So what's better, 36% weak spot damage, or, oh, I hate when it does this. Why does it do that? Is that my mouse? Slowly, 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 slowly. Or Momentum Up giving you 30% weapon damage. Let's have a look at the numbers. So I couldn't take into consideration the fire rate, but I did math out the first half of the magazine for Momentum Up and the second half of the magazine for Momentum Up, and I did that both for both perks actually, because we had to do that because of the way MG4 works. I also paired them with Momentum Up with Precision Rush, Momentum Up with Shootouts, Precise Strike with Precision Rush, and Precise Strike with Shootouts. I'm also pairing it with the weapon mods too, and this was the results. So Momentum Up with Shootout had the highest body damage. So it had 4 points, so about 5% more than Precise Strike with Shootout, which makes sense because Precise Strike is just looking at weak spot damage, and so it's not doing anything there. But Shootout is still very good. Momentum Up is giving you 30% damage on the back end of the magazine, also the fire rate. So yes, it's the top performer for body shots. Now the top performer mathematically for weak spot shots is Precise Strike with Precision Rush. Not a huge surprise there, but what is surprising is Precise Strike with Shootout is only 4% less than that, whereas Momentum Up with Shootout is 22% less than that. Now, when I did the practical test, we had very similar results. Once again, the top performer for body shots is Momentum Up with Shootout, but the top performer for precision was actually Precise Strike with Shootout, and it was 1.4% better than Precision Rush, so very, very close. What that is once again helping maintain, if you keep that weapon damage going between numbers and you try to keep some of that weapon damage going, Shootout can outperform Precision Rush. So what do we take away from all that? Here are my rules. If the boss has no weak spots and you can't be bothered aiming at small enemies, okay, so if you've got small human-like enemies that have small heads for weak spot damage, or you're using a controller, I mean, I'm on a mouse and keyboard and I still can't be bothered aiming, right? And you just want to shoot them in the body. Your best option is Momentum Up for your helmet mod, Shootout for your weapon mod. Cool. If a boss has a weak spot and you're doing a silo, so you have to deal with small enemies to get there, Precise Strike and Shootout is your best like all-rounder. So you're going to do around 6.5% less than using Momentum Up on body shots, but you're going to do like 16% more on weak spots than momentum up. So you don't need to change anything. You can run it through the entire silo, precise strike and shootout. If you're just doing a boss rush mode, like you're just farming monoliths and the boss has a weak spot, your tippity top DPS mathematically is your precise strike and precision rush. However, if you can reload and get damage back out onto target quickly, you can run precise strike and shootout. Okay, let's talk about mask mods, but very quickly, you probably understand why Oasis Mask is very good now that you know how Fast Gunner works, because it has a unique effect that says Fast Gunner max stacks plus 10, and then also attack plus 1% per stack, so giving you an extra percent of attack per stack and adding 10. So before you start with a base of 5 Fast Gunner stacks, so this brings you up to 15. And if you put on the mod Blitzkrieg, it gives you another Fast Gunner stack of plus 5, additional fire rate plus 1% for each stack. So this is how you get the max stacks currently in the game for Fast Gunner, which is 20 Fast Gunner stacks. Remembering that you're getting attack and fire rate for each stack, which is also being changed by this mod and the Oasis Mask. And attack is a very good stat to have because it changes your base damage before all your calculations are done. Cool. So one option is the Blitzkrieg. I think I'm saying that right. And the other option is Gun. Oh, it always does this. And the other option is Gunslinger, which says when in Fast Gunner state, weak spot damage plus 30%. So what's better? The 30% weak spot damage or your Blitzkrieg, which pairs really well with the Oasis Mask and gives you an extra 5 Fast Gunner stacks. Okay, so what does the math say? So when I plug all this into my spreadsheet, Blitzkrieg with shootout had the best body damage. So if you're just shooting a boss with no weak spot or you're just shooting small enemies, that is the best damage for the body. Surprisingly, mathematically, the Gunslinger with Precision Rush had the best weak spot damage. I thought Blitzkrieg might catch up to it, but it didn't mathematically. But when we actually test it in the live environment, there's a slightly different story. First, for body shots, it was the same result. So Blitzkrieg with shootout had 11.6% more damage to the body than Gunslinger with shootout. Cool. So once again, the best option is shootout, and this time with Blitzkrieg. However, for weak spots, Gunslinger with shootout had better damage, 1.69% than Gunslinger with Precision Rush. And it was 8.4% better than Blitzkrieg with shootout. So basically, if you have Blitzkrieg on with shootout, you're going to do the most body damage you can, but you're going to lose 8% on weak spot damage compared to if you had Gunslinger with shootout or Precision Rush on. So a similar theme to the helmet. For the best like all-round build where you don't have to change your build mid-run, if you're doing a silo and you have like normal enemies, you can't be bothered shooting the weak spot, then you have a boss with a weak spot, Blitzkrieg and shootout is your best option. You're going to do the most damage on body shots. You are going to lose a little bit damage on weak spots, but you're losing 8%. It's not huge. It's a bit, but it's not like devastating kind of damage lost. But you don't have to change anything. You can just run it. You can set and forget and not have to worry. If you're trying to min-max and you're going for like a boss rush mode on monoliths, like a monolith, and the boss has a weak spot, then if you want to min-max, you should go Gunslinger with shootout if you can get follow-up shots. And if you can't get follow-up shots, you should use Gunslinger with Precision Rush. Now, you might be asking, but Blitzkrieg is getting you the extra damage because you every stack of 5, you actually get 0.5 seconds of infinite damage, remember, from the MG Predator. And it also has the fire rate. So like, how does that match up? I did take both of these clips, like I recorded both, I put them into Adobe, I put them frame by frame and still compared Gunslinger with weak spot damage versus Blitzkrieg with weak spot damage, and Gunslinger still came out on top, even when you consider the fire rate, right? So if you are min-maxing, Gunslinger is a better option. Blitzkrieg is just great. Set and forget. Pair it with Shootout for your weapon mod, and you don't really have to worry about anything. Okay, looking at the mods for your chest piece, there's nothing specific legendary-wise that you can use that will complement Fast Gunner or the Predator. These are all usually defensive perks. So this really comes down to looking at your attributes and understanding how your damage stacking works. And this is where you can make a decision based on what you have for the best options. So you could have a legendary mod that has something like magazine capacity is very good for what we're doing, because remember, if we can stay in the top 50% of the magazine, we actually get 40% attack damage for our MG. So magazine capacity is good, but also remember how everything else stacks. So if you want to do damage against a boss, you want damage against great ones. If you can get weapon damage on your attribute, that would also be good. And then if you're doing, say, weak spot damage, you obviously want something that's got weak spot on it too, right? If you're doing damage against bosses with weak spots. If you really want to min-max, I think probably what you want to start looking at is your munitions amplifier. So this has weapon damage on it. This is actually not bad. Damage against elites, magazine capacity. But also, so I think if you're going for like a generalized build and you're going through silos and need to just shoot normal enemies and not bothering with shooting weak spots, put on weapon damage. If you are focusing on bosses or at least want a little bit more weak spot damage, the weak spot damage boost is actually pretty nice. Something like this is perfect. Weak spot damage plus 15%, weapon damage plus 3.6, and damage against great ones 2.4. That's a perfect example of a good attribute role, because all of that stacks multiplicatively. Weak spot stacks multiplicatively with weapon, which stacks multiplicatively with great ones. So that is a great perk for me. So have a look at what you've got. Weak spot for boss damage, if they have a weak spot. Munitions for like general all-rounder build, just for additional weapon damage. Or if you have a legendary mod that gives you some defensive stats and they have really good attributes on it, like a weak spot, a weapon damage, and a great one, great. And magazine capacity, that would be good too. Cool. When it comes to the pants, I think there's only really one option mod-wise, which is bullet siphon. You get weapon damage plus 5% every 5 bullets consumed in the magazine, topping out at 20% extra weapon damage. Everything else doesn't seem to pair with Fast Gunner. Unless I'm missing something, let me know. I know last time I missed a couple things, but this seems to be the top pick, really, bullet siphon. And then also, obviously, make sure you get the right attribute effects. So this has got weak spot damage, which is great. Damage against normal enemies is okay. Elite enemies, a bit of a dub up there, so that's not the best for me. So find one with the best attribute effects on it as well. Okay, looking at the gloves, it's similar logic to the chest piece, which is you've got munitions amplifier or you've got your weak spot damage boost, but now they have a legendary version. So this weak spot damage boost, 25% weak spot damage as its core effect, but then I've also got the attributes, weak spot damage, which is fantastic, damage against great ones, also good for killing bosses that have a weak spot, and then at the very end, not activated yet, magazine capacity, which is very good for this build as well. So find the ones with the best attributes on them. Weak spot, damage against great ones if you're doing bosses, magazine capacity is great. Weapon damage, if you can find it, is also very good. And you could also choose munitions if you just want another 15% weapon damage. Once again, probably more of an all-rounder build. It really just depends on what you're doing with the build. In general, though, I do prioritize a weak spot for the gloves. I did plug all this into the Excel spreadsheet, but it just kind of depends what you're shooting, right? Like, you're obviously going to get more damage if you're shooting bodies with munitions compared to weak spot. So it just depends on the activity you're doing and I would just prioritize your secondary attributes and find the best one there. Okay, when it comes to the shoes, you have two main options. The first is Covered Advance, which you probably already have in your build, which is taking no damage within 4 seconds, grants 20% melee, weapon, and status damage for 30 seconds. All you got to do is not take any damage, and you'll get a flat 20% weapon damage added to your total. Once again, pick the best attributes for that. If you are feeling lazy, a Ruthless Reaper is not bad if you're just going through silos. Obviously, you're going to miss out on boss damage, but for just taking out like small enemies and ad control, after getting 2 kills, refills your magazine 100% from your reserves. So pretty chill for like sitting back on the couch and never having to reload. It also allows you to get the most potential out of the MG4 Predator because the top half of the magazine does 40% attack value. So that's really nice. Just don't pair it with momentum up because then you're never gonna hit the bottom half of the magazine for momentum up pretty much. So, but if you're feeling a bit lazy, you can put Ruthless Reaper on as well, but just more of a playstyle thing. Max damage is going to be your covered advance. Okay, build number 1. This is my all-rounder build. You can use this from start to finish in a silo. It does the most body shot damage compared to the other combinations of mods. It does not do the highest DPS on weak spots. However, it's not bad. It's like 8% less than the other build I'm going to show you. So if you can't be bothered changing when you get to a boss, or if you're doing silos, so you're not doing like a monolith, you're doing like a silo, this is very good. MG4 Predator, of course, what we're talking about. The weapon mod you want for that is Shootout. Then, if you can, 3 pieces of Bastille armor. This is going to give you plus 40% weapon damage when you duck down. Pretty nice. On your helmet, you want the mod Precise Strike. Then for your mask, you want Oasis Mask, which gives you extra fast gunner stacks. You want to pair that with Blitzkrieg for the mask mod. On the gloves, we want the weak spot damage boost. On the shoes, we want covered advance. On the top, we want munitions amplifier. On the pants, we want bullet siphon. Ignore my attribute effects on these because I've reset my server. I'm only in week 2. I actually need to get back to grinding silos again to get the right mods. So all the weapon testing, I took into consideration the attributes and like adjusted the values for it. But these are not what you don't want to be going for crit damage here. So on your attribute effects, you want weak spot damage, weapon damage, and then whatever you're doing for this, you can have damage against normal enemies or elite enemies, and then magazine capacity. Okay, a summary of build number 2. Now this is just boss weak spot targeting, or I guess you could use it on smaller enemies too. However, you lose a lot of damage on body shots, so you really do have to be hitting weak spots with this build. Okay, so yeah, I would use this pretty much in monoliths with bosses with very juicy weak spots like the treants, and then you can post a YouTube video and say, look how good I am. Right, MG Predator put with Precision Rush. Same amount of armor as before, so 3 bits of Bastille for the 40% weapon damage, 2 bits of Renegade for the weak spot damage, and your Oasis Mask. So on the helmet, you want Precise Strike. On your Oasis Mask, you want Gunslinger. Does actually perform better than Blitzkrieg when you're shooting weak spots. On your gloves, weak spot damage boost. On your boots, covered advance. On your jacket, you can actually go either munitions or the weak spot boost. I did value testing on this in my Excel spreadsheet. They're like 1% different. So pretty much get either munitions or weak spot and make that decision based on the attribute effects. This has magazine capacity, so that's pretty good. So I'm going to go with that. And then on the pants, bullet siphon is the last mod. There you have it, every mod tested for the MG4 Predator build relating to fast gunner with a focus on weak spot and weapon damage. Like I said, I've said multiple times, I'm only in week 2 of this new server. I would like to now grind all these out, get my, try to min-max as much as I can and actually show you some clips against the boss. And I also would like to pair it against a crit damage because I've seen a lot of people ask about crit damage. I've got all that from the shrapnel, like I know what's going to be best for that. I've got the Lone Wolf set, so I can actually put them head to head, but my shrapnel set is much more optimized because I spent a whole season grinding for that, and my weak spot, fast gunner, weapon damage is not optimized, so need a little bit more time, but that's why I did the math on it to show you what would work out and what wouldn't, and obviously testing, on a dummy, just taking into consideration the core effects of each mod. Hope that helps. Hope you get your DPS up. I had lots of good comments last time. People saying my DPS has improved a lot, and I hope this does for you as well. Give weak spot and weapon damage a shot with fast gunner with the MG4. Pretty nice. Okay. If you'd like to support the channel and leave a comment, you can leave the words MG4. As usual, it's been a pleasure. This is Myelin Games. Peace.